Today, you probably told a lie. Not a big one. Maybe you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Maybe you said you loved a gift you didn't. It felt automatic. You didn't even plan it.
You're not alone. Researchers who study honesty estimate that most adults tell at least one small lie in almost every single day of their lives. Most of them so minor, we forget we said them within minutes. That small, automatic lie isn't a character flaw. It's one of the most advanced things your brain can do. And understanding why we lie tells us something surprising about how humans became human.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to trace this ability all the way back to a toddler in a research lab, to a monkey stealing food, to the exact moment your brain learned to imagine what someone else is thinking. And by the end, you'll understand something that sounds strange at first. The same mental trick behind your smallest lie is also what makes you capable of trust, empathy, and telling a good story. So, when did you tell your very first lie? The answer is younger than you'd guess. Let's start there. In the 1870s, Charles Darwin, yes, that Darwin, was watching his own toddler son one afternoon when the boy walked into the room with sugar smeared all over his face. Darwin asked what happened. The boy's eyes brightened with guilt, and he said, "Nothing." Darwin wrote it down, worried that lying this young might be a bad sign about his son's character. Darwin turned out to be wrong to worry. More than a century later, modern psychologists would prove that lying this early isn't a warning sign at all. It's a predictable, universal stage of growing up. Picture a toddler in a modern research lab. A researcher shows her a toy, then says, "Don't peek while I step out." The moment the door closes, she peeks. When the researcher comes back and asks, "Did you peek?" Here's what's fascinating. 2-year-olds usually admit it, but by age 3, more children look the researcher right in the eye and say no. By age 4, nearly half of children have lied. By 7 to 12, it's about 80%. This isn't a sign something's wrong with them. It's a sign their brain just leveled up. To lie well, a child has to do something remarkable. Imagine what you're thinking. Guess how you'll react, and hide the truth on purpose. That takes real brain power, more than just telling the truth does. One researcher, Kang Lee, has spent his career studying this. He's personally observed more than 5,000 children lying to his face, and even he admits he still can't always tell when his own son is lying to him. And here's the twist. The same 4-year-old who lies to avoid trouble can also use that skill kindly, hiding your birthday gift, or gently telling you a haircut looks great. So lying isn't simply bad behavior. It's a milestone. Proof a child's mind has learned to model someone else's mind. Darwin was watching the birth of something. He just didn't have the word for it yet. That word is theory of mind. And it's not just a phrase for children. It's about to explain something in every relationship, every friendship, and every story humans have ever told. But before we get there, let's ask a stranger question. Are humans even the only species that lies? Deep in the ocean, a cuttlefish might disagree. Deep in the ocean, a cuttlefish does something strange. It can flash a mating display on one side of its body toward a nearby female, while making the other side look plain and dull, so a rival male right next to it doesn't notice. It's essentially living 2 conversations at once, a private message to one animal and a false, calming message to another at the exact same moment. On land, some fireflies take deception even further. Female fireflies in the genus Photurus are nicknamed femme fatales because they can perfectly copy the mating flash of a completely different firefly species. A male from the other species sees that flash, thinks he's found a mate, and flies down, only to be caught and eaten. It's not an accident.
It's a hunting strategy built entirely out of a lie. Birds do it too. A common cuckoo lays her egg in another bird's nest. The host bird doesn't notice the swap and ends up raising a chick that isn't even hers, sometimes at the expense of her own babies. Back among primates, remember the capuchin monkey? A lower-ranking one spots food, but a bigger monkey is closer. So the small one screams a fake predator alarm. Everyone scatters. The little liar stays behind and eats. Vervet monkeys, rhesus monkeys, baboons. Researchers have documented false alarm calls, hidden food caches, and distraction tactics across dozens of primate species, almost always aimed at more dominant animals.
But here's where scientists get careful. Does that monkey know it's lying? Or is it just an instinct that happened to work, and evolution kept it because it worked? That's still genuinely debated.
Even the cuttlefish and the firefly probably aren't thinking about deception the way you do. Their tricks are built into their biology, not chosen in the moment. That distinction matters. What scientists do agree on is this. Whatever animals are doing, humans do it on a completely different level. Flexibly, deliberately, and constantly. One writer even joked we should have been named Homo phallics, deceptive man, instead of Homo sapiens. So why are humans such advanced liars? One leading theory has a name that sounds like a spy thriller, the Machiavellian intelligence hypothesis. Let's go inside the brain that invented it. In 1988, two researchers named Richard Byrne and Andrew Whiten proposed something bold. Our brains didn't grow huge because we needed to hunt better or build tools. They grew huge because living in groups is socially exhausting. This is also called the social brain hypothesis. The bigger and more complex your group, the more mental effort it takes to track who owes who a favor, who's trustworthy, and who might be scheming against you. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar found something remarkable across primate species. The bigger an animal's neocortex, the outer wrinkled part of the brain, relative to the rest of its brain, the bigger its social group tends to be. Using that pattern, Dunbar estimated the number of stable relationships a human brain can realistically track, around 150 people. It's now known as Dunbar's number. It's worth being honest here. Dunbar's exact number of 150 is debated, and later studies replicating it have gotten a much wider range. But the core idea that social complexity shaped brain evolution is still taken seriously by many researchers. Either way, the underlying pressure is real. More relationships means more chances to be helped or betrayed. And in that environment, being able to bluff, exaggerate, or quietly withhold the truth wasn't cheating. It was a survival skill. The better you were at reading and gently misleading others, the more resources, allies, and support you could secure without ever throwing a punch. That's a strange thing to sit with. The same social pressure that built trust, friendship, and cooperation also built our talent for deception. They didn't evolve separately. They evolved together. But the Machiavellian intelligence hypothesis only explains why evolution rewarded social scheming. It doesn't explain the exact mental trick that makes lying possible in the first place. For that, we need to go one layer deeper, into the brain of a single child. Neuroscientists have linked this kind of social reasoning to activity in the brain's prefrontal regions, the areas involved in planning, self-control, self-imagining, and imagining other people's perspectives. But brain regions alone don't explain how a 4-year-old learns to fool you. That takes a very specific mental skill, one we already caught a glimpse of back in that research lab. It's time to name it properly. In 1978, two researchers named David Premack and Guy Woodruff asked a strange question. Does a chimpanzee have a theory of mind? They were testing a chimp named Sarah, showing her videos of a human struggling with a problem, then asking her to pick the solution.
Sarah kept picking the right answers, suggesting she understood what the human wanted, even without being told directly. Premack and Woodruff coined a term for that ability: theory of mind. Understanding that other minds hold their own beliefs, goals, and knowledge.
The clearest way to test this in children came a few years later, the Sally Ann test. A child watches a puppet named Sally put a marble in a basket, then leave the room. While she's gone, another puppet moves the marble to a box.
When Sally comes back, where will she look for her marble? Children under about 4 almost always say the box, because that's where they know it is. Around age 4, something clicks, and kids start saying the basket, where Sally still believes it is.
That moment, realizing someone else's mind can hold false information, is the exact same skill needed to lie convincingly. You can't fool someone about what they know until you understand what they don't know.
Interestingly, the year after their first study, Premack and Woodruff published a follow-up paper with an even bolder title: Intentional Communication in the Chimpanzee, the Development of Deception. But 30 years of follow-up research revealed something more nuanced. Chimpanzees clearly understand what others want and what others can see, but there's still no solid evidence they understand false beliefs, the way a 4-year-old human does.
That gap is exactly why human deception is on a different level. It's not just about knowing what someone wants. It's about modeling a completely false picture inside their head and managing it on purpose.
And here's the reframe that changes how you should feel about it. That same exact ability, reading what's in someone else's head, is also what makes you a good teacher, a good storyteller, and a good friend. Remember Kang Lee, the researcher who's watched more than 5,000 children lie? His conclusion after decades of this work is simple. Lying isn't the opposite of good character. It's a sign the social brain is developing exactly on schedule. Lying and empathy aren't opposites. They come from the exact same root, the ability to hold someone else's mind inside your own, even when what's in there isn't true. So by now, you understand the actual engine behind every lie you've ever told. Not malice, not weakness, just a brain that learned very young how to model another person's mind. Which raises the next question. If this ability is so powerful, why didn't it just make humans a species of constant liars, unable to trust each other at all? The answer is that lying didn't tear human groups apart. It helped hold them together. Psychologist Bella DePaulo ran one of the most famous studies on everyday lying. She asked people to keep a daily diary of every lie they told for a week. The result? Adults lie in roughly 1 out of every 5 social interactions. But a larger, later survey found something surprising. Most people barely lie at all. About 60% of people reported telling 0 lies in the past 24 hours. A small number of frequent liars account for most of the lies told overall. Of the lies people do tell, DePaulo's research found they're about twice as likely to be self-centered, protecting your own image or convenience, as they are to be for someone else's benefit. But when researchers looked specifically at the lies people consider harmless, white lies, they found these make up roughly 2/3 of everything people admit to lying about. And here's the part that surprises most people. Researchers Levine and Schweitzer found that when someone tells a kind lie to protect another person, observers often judge them as more moral than someone who tells a blunt, hurtful truth. That doesn't mean truth doesn't matter. It clearly does. It means people instinctively weigh how something is said and what it costs the listener, alongside whether it's technically accurate. Zoom out to the scale of a whole tribe, and this gets even bigger. Small strategic kindnesses, softening bad news, quietly protecting a friend's mistake,
helped keep early human groups from falling apart.
And here's where it connects to something even bigger: storytelling itself. Myths, legends, and fiction are technically elaborate untruths, and every human culture on Earth tells them anyway.
So the same mental trick that lets a 4-year-old fib about a marble is the ancestor of every fairy tale, every white lie, and every gentle, "it's fine." Deception didn't damage human society. In a strange way, it helped build it.
But this can't be the whole story. A species full of skilled liars can't function forever, unless it also gets good at catching them. So evolution had one more problem left to solve. If humans got this good at lying, evolution had a problem to solve too. A species full of skilled liars can't function, unless it also gets good at catching them. Psychologists Lida Cosmides and John Tooby propose that human brains carry something like a built-in cheater detector. But here's the twist. Despite that built-in instinct, decades of research show humans are actually terrible at spotting lies in real time. A massive analysis of over 24,000 people found accuracy sits at just 54%, barely better than a coin flip.
Even trained police officers and professional interrogators don't score meaningfully higher than everyday people. We rely on gut instinct and body language, but those cues turn out to be far less reliable than we assume. So if we can't reliably catch a lie in the moment, how did early human groups stay honest at all? The real answer wasn't suspicion. It was something quieter: talking about each other. Researchers have found that gossip works better than direct punishment at keeping a group honest. Once someone's reputation as a liar spreads, the whole group quietly adjusts. Fewer people trust them, fewer people help them. That's a powerful incentive. If your survival depends on your group trusting you, you learn fast which lies are worth the risk, and which ones will get you quietly frozen out.
This is called reciprocal altruism theory, the idea that long-term cooperation only works if cheaters eventually pay a real social cost. Otherwise, honest cooperators would always lose out. So over thousands of generations, two systems grew side by side: the skill to deceive and the skill to detect deception and punish it socially, imperfect as that detection is. Neither one ever fully won, and that tug of war is still running inside you today.
And this is why total honesty isn't actually what kept human groups together. A careful, socially monitored balance between truth and tact did. So by now, the picture should be getting clear. Lying isn't a bug in human nature. It's a feature, one that came bundled with trust, empathy, storytelling, gossip, and the entire structure of human society. One more piece completes the picture: what all of this means for you, right now, today. So let's go back to this morning. That small lie you told without thinking, "I'm fine," or "I love it, thanks." Now you know what was actually happening in your brain.
You were running a calculation your ancestors ran around a fire thousands of generations ago. What does this person believe? What do I want them to believe? And how much does the gap between those two things matter?
That calculation is the same one a 2-year-old starts learning in a research lab, the same one a capuchin monkey stumbled into by accident, and the same one that scaled up across thousands of years, built trust, language, and entire civilizations. It's also the same reason you're honestly pretty bad at catching other people's lies, just 54% accurate, barely better than guessing. And it's why gossip, not suspicion, has always been humanity's real lie detector. None of this means lying is always okay. Plenty of lies genuinely hurt people, and trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Most people, most of the time, actually tell very few lies at all, and that's worth remembering too. But the next time you catch yourself softening the truth to protect someone's feelings, you're not being fake. you're doing something deeply, anciently human. The same thing that helped your species survive together in the first place. So here's the full picture. A 2-year-old in a lab, a capuchin monkey by a feeding platform, a shaman poet telling stories by firelight, and you this morning saying, "I'm fine." Different centuries, same ancient trick. Tomorrow, you'll tell another small lie without even noticing. And now, maybe, you'll notice and realize you're doing something your whole species has been doing since before language even existed. If this changed how you think about your own mind, Brain Dust has another story coming about why silence makes people so uncomfortable and what your brain is actually doing in those quiet moments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.